So I have my design. Where do I start? It depends on what type of project you are doing. I have a couple of different examples here. Here is something similar to what we're going to be working on, and that it is just very large spaces and not a lot of detail in there. If you're working on something like this, it actually doesn't matter where you start. You could start here, or you can start in the middle. I like to typically start in the middle. That's just my way of doing it. I've always just started in the middle, I guess. So I would do this, and then I would do the outside pieces. If you have a piece that does have detail in it, like this piece has a center of the flower, then you're going to want to start on those small details. And the reason for that is that your loops will sometimes kind of take over part of your design. So if you start in the middle and do your design details first, then your other layers will be on the outside and not infringe on your inside details. So I started in the middle of the flower here, and then I did the outline, and then I went out and did the petals color by color. And that's the case also if you have eyes on a, say if you're doing a fox or something and you have the eyes, you're definitely going to want to start with the whites of the eyes and then the blacks of the eyes. And you're going to want to try not to punch too much in one space, because the more you punch into one space, the more the design gets lost in the details. But that's kind of something to work on later. If you're just starting, I would just work on learning how to punch needle, and then you can do learn the intricacies of the details later. So for this one, I am going to start in this little triangle here. When you start, you don't want to start on the edge of your shape, of your outline. And the reason for that is when you punch this through and you pull this through, we're going to cut this off, and it's going to be within your design. So if you cut this off at the edge of your design, then you'll have this fuzzy little not very defined piece in your punch needle piece. So you're going to want to start in the middle of your area. So for this one, I would probably start right here. So insert your needle, pull your yarn tail out to the other side, and then for your outline stitch, we're going to outline. You're always going to want to outline each section of your piece, and that's to give it a kind of a defined outline, to make it a definitive shape. If you don't do the outline, then it can kind of be a little bit fuzzy and harder to separate. So for this one, and also the outline is a closer stitch. Your outline will be every couple of holes to make it less of the gaps, so you have a defined edge to your piece. So we're going to go every couple of holes or on the outside of the outline, and just keep going every 2 holes. And then to turn, just like we said before, keep your needle and turn the corner and then take it out, and still keep doing your every 2 holes all the way around. And when you get to the corner, turn your needle and go every 2 holes all the way around. And you can kind of see these are a little bit closer than what we were doing before, and that is what we want. So every couple of holes. All the way around. Also, do you go on the line or on the outside of the line? That's one of those things that you're going to have to play around with. I sometimes go right on the line on some of my pieces, and then sometimes I go inside the line. If you're doing a detail area, it's good to stay inside the line. Don't go on the outside of the line, because then it will muddy up the lines of your design. If you're doing a piece like this, the muddying isn't necessarily important because they're such large pieces. However, I will say if you go on the line on this section, you're going to want to go on the line on this section so the lines do line up. So whatever you do on this section is what, so if you go on the inside of the line on this one, then you're going to want to go on the inside of the line on this one. And I still kind of play with inside of the line type of items because that is yarn tail. Was getting too tight of a yarn tail because that is that's really perfecting punch needle in my eyes, is figuring out how to get all of the loops to lay in a way that they're not over impinging on other items. So this one was one of my last pieces, and I learned on this one. I've been doing this for 2 years now, but I'm really learning how to not put too many loops inside the piece, because that's kind of the key of detailed loop side. And it's been fun, so don't necessarily worry about it. Try to learn, and every piece, punch needle really, honestly, every piece looks great. It's an artist thing, I guess, that we pick at it, but I think they always look good, so try not to worry too much about it. Okay, so we have our first outline, and they're all nice and close. These are extra close. See, that looks good. I like that. That's really good. So then for the second line, this is when I'm going to open up my stitch, and the reason we open up that stitch is because of that laying of the loops together. So I used to not open up my stitch as much, and my loops were really close and compact, and they didn't always necessarily lean into allowing details in your piece. So to open up the stitch, you are still going to want to go into the mountain of your first row to offset the stitch. I skip one of the mountains, so now I'll skip a mountain and go into the middle of the second mountain. So you're only going in every other row. And this is kind of just my tips, but sometimes you're not going to want to skip a row or skip a mountain because maybe those loops were too, so over here they're a little bit wider. So you're not necessarily going to want to skip that loop because then it will be too much of a gap. And you can fill in gaps later, so don't worry too much about all of these details. I'm just trying to get you to kind of think about what's going on here. So if you go in the middle of, these are a little bit bigger stitches, so I'm going every mountain. And you just keep working. But these are a little bit closer, so I can go every other one on this one. And like I said, this is kind of, what I'm talking about here is kind of perfecting punch needles. So don't worry too much about it because you're going to play around, and I've been doing this for 2 years, and I'm finally getting some of these things. So don't worry too much about it, just play around. So you can see here I have a lot of little ones, but then these are bigger stitches. And they're just kind of going to lay next to each other. So then turn the corner. And then once you have the first 2 rows, then now you really can just go in the middle of your last stitch, because those stitches will be a little bit bigger. So you should be able to go in the middle. But again, there's some stitches that there I had a really little stitch, and I knew if I put 2 really little stitches together, it would bunch up. So it's just one of those things you can kind of learn. I can tell you all the tips in the world, and I'm probably messing with your mind right now, but don't worry, it will still look good. Just play around with it. So just like that. Just like that. And then you're just going to keep going until it's all filled in. And speaking of filling in, that is another question. How do you fill in the pattern? I typically will outline it this way, and then I will just keep going until it meets in the center. That is almost 90% of the time that's what I do. I follow that outline in. Sometimes I go line by line. If I'm using a big frame and I'm on the couch, I will go line by line because then you don't have to turn it as much. Also, some of my pieces, I played with the stitch on the top stitch, and so then I went line by line. So that's what is line by line? Line by line is if you would go this way and then you just keep going backwards and back, 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 back until it is all filled in. And here, if you're doing line by line, it would just look simply like this. So we fill this one in and then we turn it and just go back the same way. Just like that, and then you turn again and just keep going line by line until it's all filled in. So those are typically the two ways that you can fill in the outline. But that's also one of the things as an artist that you can kind of play around with. What looks good, if you're doing, to be honest, the outline, if you are doing this is called a back stitch and your pretty side will be your loop side, then it doesn't matter as much on the filling in part as it does for a top stitch per se. So you can kind of do whatever and it will look the same. So just play around with it, really.